Lewiston Strong.
It's been a year and I still struggled. I talk about the community and the pain I think we all felt that day.
It's been the mantra for the past year as the community and the state processes grief from the mass shooting. Some have found positives out of pain.
Something good has come out of it, even though we've all got broken hearts.
Others reflect back to the moment they heard the news and jumped into action.
There was a significant outpouring of everyone wanting to rush in and help.
And still today, a community is coming together to process, grieve, and support one another.
I was surprised how vulnerable and how honest and authentic and genuine people would be early on.
Together, we are Lewiston Strong 1 year later. 18 lives lost and thousands of others changed forever. Tricia Aslin, William Brackett, Peyton Brewer Ross, Thomas Conrad, Michael Delorier II, Max Hathaway, Brian McFarlane, Keith McNear, Ron Morin, Joshua Seal, Arthur Strout, Lucille Violette, Robert Violette, Stephen Vazella, Jason Walker, Joseph Walker, Aaron Young, and William Young. For the last year, people all over the country, in Maine, and especially in Lewiston, have been processing tragedy. Thank you for joining us here on News Center Maine Plus. I'm Amanda Hill. Our team has been working for months to share the stories of just some of the impacts the October 25th, 2023 mass shooting had on our state. Some people we met are working through their own grieving process. Some are doing what they can to help, and others are doing both. From schools to a local museum, News Center Maine's David Guilford gives us a look at how the community is making sure the people we lost are never forgotten.
Can you tell me what your vision is for exactly how these attach?
How do you pay proper respect to a great loss while people are still raw from the pain? Here in Lewiston, the Maine Museum of Innovation, Learning, and Labor took on the task of honoring, teaching, and healing in the years that follow the October 25th mass shooting.
This is the most important work I've ever done, and I know it's helping lots of people, and that's all you can really hope for if you're running a museum.
In December, we followed museum director Rachel Ferrante and local artist Tanya Hollander as volunteers collected more than 1,000 memorial items from the two shooting scenes. The flowers, however beautiful, don't last forever. But the pair found meaning in what would otherwise be thrown away.
I saved the sleeves, and I didn't exactly know why. And I remember calling Rachel and being like, are we saving sleeves? And she's like, no, why would we do that? And I was like, I don't know, but I feel like we need to.
261 plastic flower sleeves. This is the museum's newest exhibit. Look at them grouped together, and they symbolize the collective trauma we, as Mainers, are still processing. Look closer, and each sleeve is as it was the day it was placed on the ground.
Some of them have petals still stuck to the inside, which I find really beautiful. Some of them look pristine, and some of them are pretty beat up.
The museum is not only holding on to memorials, but also artifacts. When the bowling alley's owners changed the front doors, they could have thrown the old ones in the trash. Instead, they came here. Images of these doors from the night of the shooting have been seen around the world, but Ferrante keeps them locked away. Lewiston and Maine, she says, are not ready to see them. Then why keep them at all if they still bring pain?
We're trying to collect the amazing community spirit that came together after such a horrible tragedy, but also, unfortunately, part of the horrific events of that night. And we don't necessarily need to display them now, and maybe not anytime soon, but it is important to keep them, because if we don't, then they're just lost forever.
Each item is part of the story. It's too soon for the public to view this chapter, but in 2 years, maybe 5 years, we'll likely be in a different phase of grief. Jake Langlis knows about working through emotion. He's superintendent of Lewiston Public Schools, Maine's second largest district that's rapidly growing.
Have they been afforded the opportunity to fully process that?
I mean, I think the real answer is no. Not because they couldn't or because they just haven't, but because I think there's a real question out there about how do you process. That works for you? I don't know.
Langlis and his staff have been meeting all 5,700 students where they're at, as each person grieves in their own way.
Yeah, people are still hurting. We have to acknowledge that. How you do that, I don't always know, but I know that a lot of us are trying to do that. We're not going to bury this thing and act like it didn't happen. It did happen.
Langlis is not alone in his work.
Hey, they'll take good care of you because they're the pros.
Jason Fuller grew up here.
Thank you, Justin. Been here my whole life.
And he's been the high school's athletic director.
Yeah, not complaining.
For 20 years.
You know, has its positives and it has its negatives. So.
1 week after the shooting, Lewiston and Auburn's Edward Little high schools played their annual football game. For many from the two cities separated only by the Androscoggin River, it was the perfect distraction from the emptiness we all felt, if only for a few hours.
Been AD here for 20 years?
Yep.
You must love your job.
I do. I love the community. Here, I was like, I've said this a bunch of times to a lot of people. I had great coaches when I was here. I kind of lived a fairy tale life when I was here as a student. And I always felt like this was my way to give back to the community and help someone else out. Every time I do it, I can't. It's been a year and I still struggled. I talk about the community and the pain I think we all felt that day.
Ready, turn it back. Good job. Good job.
Whether through sports,
Well, we can use some of them here.
or art,
Old building, new building.
or a conversation in a hallway, Lewiston is not moving on, but moving forward into the next year together.
Art really does have a powerful impact on people, and in this particular case, I would say art has the power to help process and heal.
I think it's really important to acknowledge that we're doing fine. We're not okay, and that's all right. But we're going to continue to work at it to get to a place where we are much better off. But to bury it and act like everyone should be fine, I think would be a mistake.
That was David Guildford reporting. Of the 18 people killed in the Lewiston shootings, 4 of them were members of Maine's deaf community. Josh Seal, Brian McFarlane, Billy Brackett, and Stephen Vozella. The men were playing in a cornhole tournament for the deaf and hard of hearing at Schmenke's Bar and Grill that night. Press conferences that followed the shootings, then the manhunt, featured American Sign Language interpreters. They worked with Josh Seal and were friends with victims of the shooting, yet there they stood, working to share information. I checked in with members of the deaf community, including Stephen Vozella's widow, to find out what's changed for them since the immense loss on October 25th.
We are starting to hear about and see access challenges.
Maine got to know Josh Seal during the pandemic as an American Sign Language interpreter for the CDC briefings, but members of the deaf community already knew and loved him.
Oh, yeah. You know, it was really a big hole.
We spoke with Regan Thibodeau through an interpreter at the University of Southern Maine, where she teaches American Sign Language. She tells us Maine already had a small pool of interpreters after the pandemic. Many stuck with remote work. Some moved on to better paying jobs. And after October 25th, the pool got even smaller.
So when Josh, we experienced that loss, the 3 of us really had to figure out how to take over and share his caseload. The people that he was working with and providing services to on a day-to-day basis. We really had to step up and do that, and it was left to the 3 of us with only 1 male interpreter.
The good news, awareness for the deaf community and what it needs has grown since the pandemic and the shootings. More people are signing on to learn ASL, but it's not an easy or quick language to learn, as some of Thibodeau's students can explain, already a few years into their studies.
Since it is not just a different language, but it's also a different modality for hearing people who grew up with a spoken language, it's a completely different way to learn how to communicate since you're using your body in a different way. So it takes a while, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like with trees, when you cut them down, you've planted new ones, but it takes time to let the new ones grow. Learning ASL is not a 1 year or 2 year commitment. It's a lifestyle. So when you really want to commit to this, you have to immerse yourself, you have to interact with the community, because life impacts language, and you have to figure out how to interpret that.
That's why I got into this.
So until the interpreter pool grows, members of the deaf community now scheduling a doctor's appointment or a meeting with their child's teacher means scheduling an interpreter sometimes a month in advance. And in an emergency?
I left work. I drove straight to Auburn. I knew I needed to get to the Lewiston-Auburn area. I knew I wasn't going to stay at work. There was no way not knowing where Steve was.
Megan Vizella lost her husband Stephen on October 25th. She also lost her friends, Josh, Brian, and Billy. That night was absolute chaos for her, not just as a terrified wife.
There were so many military personnel, there were a lot of guns out, and just so many people around. And being deaf, we weren't sure exactly where we were supposed to go, and we didn't have a full understanding of where we were supposed to be. We knew we were supposed to be St. Mary's, hopefully at the emergency room, but we were just so overwhelmed.
After 14 years with Stephen, Megan is still coming to terms with life without him, along with her daughter and her stepson.
Life's not fair. Nobody should be that heartbroken.
She says not just in emergencies, the deaf community has to be included.
In the future, I feel like we have learned a lot of lessons, right? From that night, I feel like we now know we need to improve on the emergency alert systems, on captioned communication, on having an interpreter on the front of the screen or in the frame at all times. Because oftentimes we get misinformation, it's not accurate, and our community always feels like we're at a loss.
We're getting there. We're moving along. We just want, to keep growing. We don't want to stagnate. We don't want to just go back to things the way things were. We really can't allow that. We keep getting the community out. We keep getting this visibility up. So I'm really thankful.
Thankful, Thibodeau says that the hearing community is now listening. She'd like to see ASL interpreting at all community events, concerts, and gatherings, not just when things go wrong. She'd also like more people to take an interest in the needs of the deaf community, get to know your neighbor better, find out how to connect in different ways, the way many did after October 25th.
Because their lives were precious, and they loved their children. All four of these men were family people. The four of them just wanted to be part of the community and be out with each other.
Regan Thibodeau says the state of Maine is one of the lowest paying for interpreters. Much like a task force was formed to retain first responders and healthcare workers after the pandemic, she'd like to see more conversations around retaining interpreters, and she'd like to see members of the deaf community included at that table. In the midst of Maine's deadliest shooting, a group of doctors and nurses were in a race against time, and most of that fight was happening just 2 miles from where the shootings happened at Central Maine Medical Center in Lewiston. Alex Haskell spoke with a doctor about what that night was like and how other staff members are now doing.
The community, the physicians, that really drew me into joining here first as my first real job out of training.
Dr. Erway Tang has worked here for 16 years. He oversees the intensive care unit at Central Maine Medical Center.
So I was at home and I was reading a book with my youngest daughter.
On the night of October 25th, his phone started going off. Text messages from colleagues about a possible shooting.
The news of the mass shooting spread throughout the entire system very quickly. And there was a significant outpouring of everyone wanting to rush in and help.
The hospital quickly assembled a large team of surgeons, backed up by more than 100 nurses and other healthcare professionals. Over the next 42 minutes, 14 severely injured victims arrived at this trauma center. By the next morning, with the shooter on the loose, Central Maine Med was surrounded by armed guards.
I do recall, a lot of people just with their head down and in disbelief. I saw sobbing family members. I saw an incredible group of trauma surgeons.
Following surgery, survivors moved to the intensive care unit, where Tang and his team helped them begin the long journey to recovery. As Tang explains, it's his job to wake up patients, tell them for the first time where they are and what happened.
They had a sense of hopelessness. They don't want to get up. It's too painful. They're too tired. Some patients, which is very sad, were too scared to leave the ICU, even the ICU room, asking us, is there a shooter?
During this time, he and his colleagues were provided counseling, as hospital leaders realized this will be a long and emotional experience for staff too.
A lot of them really were impacted by the struggles of our patients and families. We developed this closeness that we don't normally develop with our patients. Some patients stayed for multiple months.
As survivors healed enough to go home, hospital staff gave them special send-offs, lining the hallways. Some victims receiving thunderous applause and cheers, others opting for a gentle clap. Of course, Dr. Tang was there.
We saw family members with kids, and seeing their kids run up to them gives our team continued hope and joy in doing the job that we do.
A year later, the weight of it is still heavy.
I'm doing better. I have been in touch with leaders of other ICUs who have gone through the same thing.
A chance to share experiences and feel heard. Tang says he knows colleagues are still struggling with all of this.
People don't need to say anything for us to know what they're thinking, where they are.
The whole hospital medical team has grown closer to one another. In Lewiston, Alex Haskell, News Center, Maine.
One of the people injured in the shootings and treated at Central Maine Medical Center was Kyle Secor. In fact, he was the last shooting survivor to leave the hospital. Now he's back doing what he loves, but with some limitations. Kyle is the associate head coach of the Maine Nordiques. His road to rejoining the team was certainly not easy, but he told Chris Costa he had one very big motivator.
No matter where you find it, a family wraps their arms around you.
Yeah, so the whole organization ended up actually doing the main logo on the shoulders this year.
Just ask Kyle Secor. These arms are wrapped in recognition.
It means family. We're all family.
Kyle has a new role with his familiar team, associate head coach.
Definitely on the nervous side. I mean, it's my first time back behind a bench or even on a bench since this whole happened.
All this still marked by a walking boot on his leg and memories in his mind. That night at Shemengi's, playing cornhole with his cousin, the bar manager, Joe Walker. Joe was killed that night.
I watched him get shot the first shot, and then I realized what was actually going on, so I tried to avoid and obviously hide at that point, which did not work out to my favor.
Kyle was shot too. Doctors could never put an exact number on how many times. Bullets blew 4 inches of bone off his left shin.
Luckily, the doctors were able to save it. They did not expect me to be able to save my leg at first. They thought I was getting amputated from the knee down.
His journey has been long. He spent 2 weeks in a coma.
But it's important for you guys to look for those details.
His hockey family kept him in their thoughts.
I could tell that they were rooting for me to fight through it. So they knew I was going to need that jersey one day.
I'm already going to get teary-eyed.
Then, after nearly 3 months in the hospital,
it was amazing. It was the best feeling ever. I mean, all the support that was there. And then my 2 little girls at the end, obviously, that said, welcome home. So it was tough, but it was amazing.
Since the shooting, Kyle has undergone more than 20 surgeries, with more ahead.
Honestly, it was really my wife. My wife was able to stick around with me, fight with me through the battle, and then my 2 little girls. I mean, the only reason I'm still here today, I think, is because my 2 little girls, and I had to fight for them.
That motivation determines his mantra: push forward.
Is it going to be the same life we used to live? No. Because some of us are going to live in pain the rest of our life. Some of us are going to live without a person the rest of our life. But we got to continue pushing forward.
Can you choose your family? That's debatable. Do you know what it feels like when you found it? No question.
It was amazing. I mean, I lived in Florida for 6 years, lived in Ohio for 10, and I've never seen a community like this. And I lived in a smaller community in Ohio, and I haven't seen a community come together like this. I want to say it happened because we're all a family. Everybody decided that we're one, and everybody came together as one and fought together. I mean, we're still fighting together.
That was Chris Costa reporting. Kyle says he now plays with his cousin Joe's cornhole bags as a way of keeping his memory alive. Now, Leroy Walker is the father of Kyle's cousin Joe, who was killed at Schmenge's. Leroy became pretty vocal immediately after the shootings. He told us his goal was to get his son's name and story out there to as many people as possible to keep his memory alive. We first spoke with Leroy the night of the shootings when he hadn't heard yet if Joe was okay, but said he had a gut feeling he wasn't.
And I don't know, telling you the truth, what kind of night this is going to be from now until tomorrow when I wake up to the true facts that my son is dead, and I know he's dead. I know it as well as I know. I'm standing here telling you because he's not here and he's not at any other hospital and he's not running the streets, so he would have called us because he manages Schmenge's. So I know he was there.
News Center Maine's Lee Goldberg checked back in with Leroy recently, who said he's been able to find some good in the last year.
So when people ask you, how you doing? How do you respond to something like that?
That's probably one of the hardest things to respond to because your heart is broken and you really can't tell them that your heart is broken. You can't explain to them what you mean by that unless you walked in my shoes. But the heart is broken every day, and that's the hard part to explain to people. We know we're coming close to that 1 year, and people say things get easier. That's absolutely not true. They don't get easier, they get harder.
You said something to the effect of you were going to have a hard time hating the person responsible because of your faith and your belief. And almost a year has gone by, and you've learned more, and you've seen more, and you've understood more. Is that still how you feel?
I don't hate Mr. Card. I don't hate him. I've learned a lot since then. I was absolutely right that night when I said, there's something wrong with that man. We do not go out and we don't do the things that he did unless there's something wrong. I don't hate him. I don't hate his family. And I think we've pretty much proven that the military did not do their job taking care of him with his sickness. They knew, talking to them and listening to everything that they've said, they knew this man was going off the deep end, and they didn't take care of him. So I don't hate them for that, but I'm so sorry that this man was forgotten and pushed off to the side. And then he went and did what he did.
I'm old and I'm from here, so I can speak for a lot of people, the ones who you know firsthand, the ones who you've never heard of and you're probably never going to meet. There isn't a single person out here in our state that's not tremendously sorry for your loss and your sacrifice. And I want you to know that the entire state has been and will always be with you and your family.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, and I've got thousands of letters, thousands from all over the United States. Some of them told me their life stories and said, we've left the Lord and you have brought us back to the Lord. So maybe that's my answer from the Lord with Joey. I don't know yet because it just hasn't connected yet, but I can tell you that I'm not fibbing you in any way. I have had cards sent to me. I have had phone calls. You have inspired us to believe in the Lord and go back and read our Bibles. I've had everything said to me and wrote to me. So, if anything, Joey, I guess, fed that through Jesus Christ and to me, that something good has come out of it. Even though we've all got broken hearts and we won't see each other again until it's, I guess, my day to go to heaven.
That was Leroy Walker talking with our Lee Goldberg. After the news of the shootings broke, people from all around the state, the country, even the world found a way to send messages to Lewiston. A lot of those letters were collected, and there's an effort underway to preserve them. News Center Maine's Rob Caldwell shares some of what's been written.
The cards and letters started as a trickle, turned into a stream, and then a river. They poured into Lewiston after the shootings from around the U.S. and from other countries, from people who had something to convey.
I think sending love, empathy, sympathy, that there are hopeful and good times ahead, and frankly, from some communities that have been through this before, that they understand what this community is going through.
About 1,000 of those cards and letters are now part of the permanent collection at the Maine Museum of Innovation, Learning, and Labor in Lewiston. An excerpt from one letter. In the midst of your grief and terrible loss, I want you to know that I and all of Nova Scotia are with you in thought and prayer. And another one. To Bates Campus Safety, thank you so much for your responsiveness and care, making sure we were and are all safe physically and mentally. We could not have done this without you. Sometimes the letters surprise. So much pain and unnecessary tragedy. When will we ever see change in men's mentality? It goes on and is then signed, with unconditional support and respect from an unlikely resource. It's from an incarcerated man at a state prison in Idaho. But perhaps the most poignant of the messages sent to Lewiston are these, the notes passengers wrote on napkins from a Southwest Airlines plane. Andy Garmezi and his dog Cooper from the National Crisis Response Canine Team were flying to Maine on Southwest right after the shootings, coming to offer support and understanding that only a loving dog can provide. The flight attendants were moved by their presence on the plane, which prompted Andy to make a suggestion.
If you were to pass out some napkins and ask the people to write messages that I can share with the people of Maine in the recovery, I know it would be helpful.
After the napkins were collected, something almost unheard of happened. The captain allowed an emotional Andy Garmezi to get on the PA system.
From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank all the passengers. I'd like to read just some of what you wrote. I almost didn't get through because everybody was offering their love and saying, stay strong, we support you. And, you know, it just tugs at the heartstrings. In a world where there seems to be no love, know that Southwest Flight 1843 is full of people praying for all the families who went through this horrific act of hate. And every deployment we go on, Rob, has a different takeaway. And the takeaway from Maine was the appreciation and the love of the people to Cooper and to what we're trying to assist them with. Love and prayers for all those in Lewiston, Maine.
Unlike text messages or email, all these cards and letters and napkins will endure. A reminder of the support from around the world sent to Lewiston in its darkest hour. In Lewiston, Rob Caldwell, News Center, Maine.
Finally, we can't talk about Lewiston Strong without mentioning the Maine Resiliency Center. The MRC formed a few days after the mass shooting as the need for services for people impacted grew. It's still operating now as a community center with free therapy for anyone who feels impacted by the shootings. Chris Costa introduces us to people who are using this resource as part of their healing.
You didn't have to be here that night. to feel the shockwaves.
There were a lot of kids who were here that night. But there were a lot of kids who weren't here that night who were impacted a lot.
Amy Bushway's son, Owen, is one of those kids, a teenager who needed someone to talk to.
For me and my family, that's been so valuable to have him be with other kids who understand how he's feeling and making connections and, you know, talking about it. Because I think that's really hard.
For their first time, they were coming in.
A conversation made easier by the Maine Resiliency Center. Danielle Parent is the center's director. Even she had to learn how to be vulnerable around others.
I've realized that me being vulnerable and being able to be authentic and genuine is the very root of connection, and that connection is what builds resiliency, and so it's a necessity for me.
The center offers appointments and walk-in hours too. Whether you were there or not, whether you lost a loved one or not, it's for anyone who feels impacted by the shootings.
I think that if somebody's vacillating, trying to figure out, like, am I impacted enough? The answer is yes, always. And there's a lot of power in serving others that can come through just showing up. Support groups.
The center opened just 3 weeks after the shooting. The city of Lewiston and the Maine Attorney General's office are footing the bill until federal grants reimburse them. The only other resiliency center to open faster after a mass shooting was in Orlando, Florida, site of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And they had the financial backing of Disney.
This community really rallied to be able to stand the center up pretty much overnight. And I was very surprised. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if we'd have anybody show up.
But they did. The first day, 8 people came.
And that was immensely powerful. I mean, even the first conversation we had opening these doors was folks really processing and reliving that event and seeking support and just normalizing their experience and knowing that they weren't alone.
3 days later, 60 people showed up. Word was spreading.
I was surprised how vulnerable and how honest and authentic and genuine people would be early on.
In the last 365 days, the center has served hundreds of people, not only here on Main Street in Lewiston, but out in the community, cities and towns whose people are raised to be tough.
I mean, we're kind of a pull your bootstraps up community. We're not a really like touchy-feely community. So I think it's helpful that we don't lead with like this isn't the healing center. It's not the, touchy-feely butterfly place. So I think it makes it a little more accessible because people feel like, I'm coming here for a community night. I'm not coming here to
talk about my feelings.
Talk about my feelings, even though that's what will happen. But it doesn't. It makes it more approachable.
Conversations that came up just by being in the same space, even without a prompt. The goal of the MRC is to remove as many barriers as possible for people to get help.
There's a lack of this type of service in our community, right? Where there are a lot of services, there is that kind of barrier of having to have an assessment and having to qualify to need support. And we can support somebody who is struggling with this trauma, who might not reach a PTSD diagnosis, and there isn't a real space for that.
Which is why this place fills a gap, strengthening the communities, the people left with holes in their hearts.
That's pretty special.
People like Cassandra Violet.
That's how every card was signed, letter was signed for years. All our love, all our lives, Bob and Lucy.
I had to go through some stuff, and I don't know what I would have done if Joanna wasn't there with me. Like, I don't think I would have made it through, honestly.
It's the right people that are running
it.
That was Chris Costa reporting. The center offers walk-in hours on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. There are also appointments available. You can learn more on the center's website, maineresiliencycenter.org. And for anyone struggling, whether you've been impacted by the shootings or not, Maine has a 24/7 crisis line. Trained crisis call specialists answer the line any time of day or night and provide free and confidential support. That number is on your screen. It's 1-888-568-1112. As the community continues to move through the grieving process, we will continue to tell their stories. You can find all of our Lewiston Strong 1 Year Later stories on our new Center Maine website and app. Thanks for being with us, and please take care of yourselves.